This episode, we talk about systems theory, what it is, and how we can use it to create and understand new theory in the paranormal field.
He runs towards things that go bump in the night. This is the Paranormal Theory with Topher the Paranormal Hobo, where he strips down current paranormal thought and tries to apply actual scientific theory to the field. Here is Topher.
That's right, I am Topher, and this is the Paranormal Theory podcast where I use my education to possibly map a new way to look at my interests in the paranormal. Last show, we kind of laid down an argument about the need to change our understanding of what it means to be scientific by adding anthropological concepts to our toolkit. The current concept of what paranormal theory is doesn't seem to have any real form. It started from folklore and has progressed into various ideas that seem to explain what people are seeing and often conflict with each other when it comes to different instances. I watched it go from spirits can't cross running water, which was lifted directly from folklore and stories like Sleepy Hollow, to water powers paranormal activity, to running water over quartz is what powers the supernatural stuff. I know science often presents different theories and hypotheses, and they will often change as new information is presented. But why did this change? What evidence came about that promoted the change? Who agreed that this change was important to make? Nobody I've asked knows. It literally just showed up one day on a TV show, and that was what was taken as gospel. Was it because someone found out that there was, reported activity on one side of, like that straddled both sides of running water, so they needed to make the change? It didn't take place here because this place had a high quartz content. So, everybody knows quartz stores energy. I can understand the process. Why does it work, and how do you disseminate such a proposal to get it out there to see if it works on the wider scope? How do we know that this is even a viable theory? What does it predict? What can we explain with it? Does it help understand what's going on? No, I mean, it kind of explains it, but it doesn't help us understand it. No, it does not help us understand. I mean, it provides an explanation of kind of maybe where the energy could be coming from to power this stuff, but we're not even sure that that's actually a thing either. We don't even know where the theory really fits in with any of the other theories that we use to construct and explain things. If we were serious about doing more than just scaring ourselves and collecting data points that we have no idea how to use, then we would start by looking at actually constructing a concept of ranking current theories and seeing which provides illumination and a cohesive understanding of what and what doesn't fit. I mean, I don't know the full extent of paranormal theory at this moment. Apparently, most people don't, because there's nothing online to lead us but the Parapsychological Association publications. And right now, most of what I can find on there is more worried about gender studies and feminism in the field than actual research. Not saying that that's a bad stuff. I mean, that's stuff that needs to be talked about. But if it takes away from actual field work, then it is a problem. There are concepts and ideas that we can put forward to use from other disciplines that can help us understand a more complete picture of our data sets. And in my opinion, one of those concepts comes from when I studied Lewis and Sally R. Benford and their use of systems theory in archaeology. Before we get into that, let's thank our sponsor today.
Do you know of a good production studio to hire or collaborate with?
Have you ever heard of Rutledge Productions, an award-winning production studio that has produced several feature and short films, as well as comic books and more?
No, I haven't.
If you were planning on hiring a production team for your next project and are interested in knowing if Rutledge Productions would be a good fit for your needs, then let us know. We would love to share our story and show you how we can help you enhance your stories through creativity and storytelling.
Thank you, Rutledge Productions, for being a sponsor of today's show and the network for so long. We appreciate everything you've done for us here at GP Network. But now, back to the program. What I'm talking about is thinking about the bigger picture for right now. A macro look at what paranormal theory is and how it is constructed. because right now it just appears from the outside as a jumbled mess of superstition, supposition, and wishful thinking. There does not seem to be any rhyme or reason to it, and that detracts in the term of doing science from the field as a whole. Please don't think that I'm downing the paranormal research that's being done. Most of it, though, is not really research. Most of it, what's going on is just showing people that are experiencing stuff going on that they aren't crazy and providing them a way, at least, to know that they are not alone in this. It's only data collection with no real way to interpret the data. Like I said, I'm not trying to be critical and move anyone away from the study, but if we want to be taken more seriously and not be seen as being delusional and to be more accepted by science and people, we need to start constructing something of a science out of this. That includes how we collect data as much as how we construct our methodologies and hypothesis. More rigor is never a bad thing. If I collect and interpret data in a specific manner that other people can understand and replicate, then that is being scientific. Here is the catch-22. If we look at singular disciplines, not all scientific studies can be replicated 100% of the time. Last I read, in psychology, only 39% of 100 studies were able to be replicated, and this was considered a successful replication. 61 of economic studies, 62 of natural science were successfully replicated in any given time. So here's why I'm pushing for replication, even if some other scientific fields aren't doing well at it right now. Because if we can get into a higher percentage of successful replication, document it, and put it out for others to see it, replicate it, and move forward, then we gain legitimacy. If we can replicate our research 41% of the time, we can look at psychology and point and say, hey, we're more scientifically relevant than you are. Scientists aim for their studies to be replicable. That means other researchers can come and perform a similar investigation and obtain the same basic results. When a study cannot be replicated, it suggests that our current understanding of the study or the system of our and our methods of testing are insufficient. Right now, I can only go and do my own study in a given location, and because there's no interpretation or presentation of data, I don't know if I'm replicating anything. Our testing methods may be different. Our interpretation methods may be different. And none of that moves across, and it's not sufficient right now. Let's change that. Let's come together and build a theoretical background to what we see in our data, interpret the data across a much diverse scope of theories as possible, and see how the items interact. That is what system theory is for. System theory is an interdisciplinary study of systems as they relate to one another within a larger, more complex system. The key concept of system theories, regardless of which discipline is being applied to, is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. What this means is that when holistically examining how smaller systems come together to affect a greater system, certain characteristics of the whole, the complex system, cannot be easily explained or rationalized when looking at singular pieces of the system. We should, in theory, be able to look at a small, less complex situation and data sets and see how they might interact with other small data sets in the system. The system being bounded by a single location, i.e. the location being investigated for study. Each smaller set then would be able to be analyzed on its own or in relation to the others, or as a system as a whole. And remember, this is built to work as an interdisciplinary tool, which means it doesn't matter which field in which you're applying the concept. It should be still able to organize data sets that you're applying to it for better understanding of the whole system. Same with paranormal research. I collect data on a location. There are cold spots recorded in various locations. I also, while at the location, I gather EMF fluctuations, audio artifacts that may or not be interpreted as voices, and a whole gamut of other things. We can then analyze this as individual sets, as group sets, or as a series of groups. EMF with cold spots, or audio artifacts with photographic anomalies, etc. Or we can look at it as a whole. How do they interplay this system with this system with this system? Are we already doing this? For the most part, sort of. I'm not saying that this isn't already being done, just that we need to start looking at what we do in more scientific terms. For example, one can say that a house or whatever location you're in is the system. There are several components to the system, each made up of different things that build the whole system. Or better yet, let's look at a chair. If I lay down the individual components on the floor wood, springs, foam, glue, cloth, nails, screws. You would have a hard time seeing that was a chair, especially if you're not familiar with woodworking. But each of these components can be interrogated and studied, and gain a small bit of understanding of what it is, just not a complete picture. Now I set on the floor a whole chair. It's already put together and constructed. Unless you're familiar with woodworking, you might have a hard time seeing how the wood, springs, foam, glue, nails, cloth, and my time and experience come together in order to make this larger thing. You might start making assumptions about how the pieces interact with each other, but unless you pull it all apart, you may miss out on some of the more complex relationships between the parts. Moreover, take a step even further out. Look at the chair in relation to the room that the chair resides in. Is it a living room, a study? Could be even the front porch or a back porch. What relationships are there on a larger scale are the people in the room? The system gets bigger and more complex depending on how you look at it. And smaller if you look at it, break things down further and further down. If you're looking at a party in a house in a living room with people interacting down to the components of the furniture, each is a system of things interacting with each other to create an even larger system, and so on. So we have a system, something made up of smaller individual compartments called elements or components. A complex system is made of smaller systems. So it's got several other things coming in to make a even larger complex thing. There's a host of other terms that go into the balancing act that occurs to keep a system moving. For instance, homeostasis. That's when everything is on, everything is all wrapped together and good. That's when a system is functioning and every part is balanced. That's that balancing act. If I was to remove enough screws or nails, the chair would fall apart. If I move enough or cause enough problems at a party, it falls apart. And depending on the outcome of that, it could affect the smaller pieces, like a broken chair from a fight. How are we supposed to think about paranormal research in the view of systems theory? Well, let's look at how it's applied to other sciences. In psychology, system psychology examines human behavior and experiences within complex systems. Individuals, communities, populations, and other groups are considered to be systems in homeostasis. When something happens to that community or population that affects the homeostasis of that group, it begins to break down. And an interdisciplinary field of ecology, systems ecology takes a holistic approach of systems theory to their studies of ecological systems, focusing on ecosystems and interactions between biological and ecological systems. Systems engineering is another interdisciplinary approach that employs the principles of systems theory and applies it towards engineering. When applied in the real world, it often looks like a group of effort that considers all the stages of product or service in the developmental phase, from its creation to use to disposal. A great example of the universality of certain scientific assumptions and principles, systems chemistry takes systems theory all the way down to the molecular level, which is what I think we need to do with it as an example for paranormal psychology or paranormal research. These scientists examine the networks of interacting molecules to create functions from sets of molecules with different emergent properties. These examples show us that systems theory can offer insight from molecular level all the way up to environmental effects on behavior and vice versa. There are some weaknesses to the use of systems theory and the application of it in the paranormal field. One of them is that there may not be enough understanding of some of the components to draw an adequate understanding of the whole. Another may be that there's nothing that you can do with it other than being able to see where things are breaking down. In other words, a difficulty in creating actionable conclusions. But finding out where the dysfunction, or in our case, irregular or paranormal occurrences, are, looking through the systems theory lens, should make them more easily identifiable in certain areas. Am I pushing for there to be a paranormal systems theory developed, or rather adapted to fit our research needs? Kind of. What I am doing is using this as an example of how we can start building upon what we already have, structure it, give it more weight to the outside observer, and even to our peers for them to review. We should be looking at what disrupts the homeostasis of a location, what causes the emergence of new and smaller systems, and how that impacts the larger, more complex system. For example, a house is running in homeostasis. something happens. We don't know what, but elements have started to come together and there emerges another system in the house. This one, while interacting with the others, causes conflicts and removes the house from homeostasis, and it moves towards instability and towards chaos. I hope that you have a better grasp on the systems theory and come up with ways to use it and which apply to the field as a whole. Can I right now? Probably, but it should take a full group of people coming together and mulling it over and getting a better grasp on things and to understand what it is and how to implement it. I'm just here to point directions for us to travel and explore. Next time, we'll be talking range theory and how applications of such may help us structure the theories into useful groups to better understand their relationships to our research. But as for now, you've been listening to the Paranormal Theory Podcast with Topher, the Paranormal Hobo. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a review and a rating. To catch all the latest from the Paranormal Theory Podcast, you can follow me on Instagram at PF_Paranormal Files and on Twitter at Files Paranormal. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.